Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6:30, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll note for the record that all members of City Council are present and accounted for. And if you would, please join us as we stand and pledge allegiance to the flag to begin our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming out this evening. And the first item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. So consent agenda consists tonight of the council meeting minutes from our last meeting on June 22nd, 2020, and the financial management report for the month ending May 31st, 2020. Is there anyone that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second by Councilman Burnett. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda this evening, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. That'll wrap up the consent agenda. So next item up is the public hearing portion of our meeting, and that consists of two items tonight. That is PH-20-07, City of Alpharetta Comprehensive Plan 2040 will be our first public hearing item. So I'll welcome Director Cook.
I think this is on, yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This presentation will serve as the kickoff for the planning process for the 2040 Alpharetta Comprehensive Plan. The city's deadline to adopt the plan is actually June of next year. The process will be conducted in-house with the exception of one consultant that we'll be using for the housing component, which is Bleakley Advisory Group. Otherwise, this is going to be a task that we perform in-house. Three other members of the team will be presenting tonight. Michael Woodman will be here to discuss the general requirements and the schedule. And then we also have Ben Kern and Jay Burnett. Jay is actually a rising senior at Georgia Tech, so they're going to go over some of the components that we have put together for outreach. I've heard from a lot of you concerned about outreach during, of course, COVID-19. So besides the in-person meetings, they've actually come up with some pretty interesting ways to get additional input. So I'll turn it over to Michael, and he will go over the components.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just go over some of the rules that we have to follow as part of this process. The Georgia Department of Community Affairs does have established rules for local comprehensive planning. Those rules require that we develop a community involvement plan. And that plan will include, among one of many things, the formation of a steering committee. And that steering committee represents individuals that the mayor and council have appointed, as well as a few others. The state also requires, as part of that steering committee, that there is at least one elected official as part of that steering committee, as well as one person from the economic development community. The areas of focus that we'll be looking at are community goals, needs, and opportunities analysis, land use, housing, economic development, transportation, and this one was recently added within the last year, broadband services we have to address, as well as the community improvement element and a 5-year community work program. The state DCA requires that we update these elements every 5 years. We did a major update back in 2010, and we did a minor update to the comp plan back in 2015. And that was in conjunction with the downtown master plan. Of course, today's kickoff meeting meets one of the first requirements for a public hearing. So this is the first required public hearing. And we have developed a tentative project schedule for the comp plan process. We anticipate steering committee meetings beginning in August. as well as in December and April. We'll have public meetings in September, January, and May. And then the second required public hearing will occur with the transmittal of the draft plan to DCA and ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission. We expect that to occur sometime in May of 2021, and hopefully wrapping up and adopting the comprehensive plan by the end of June 2021. And with that, unless you have any other questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ben Kern and Jay Burnett.
Do we have any questions from council at this time? Please continue.
Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight as we kick off our comprehensive plan. In addition to in-person meetings, we have a 4-tiered digital engagement approach that we look to leverage throughout this planning process. We chose these tools because we find them to be user-friendly, engaging, and able to gather the community feedback that will ultimately serve as the backbone for this plan. We'll take a minute or two to touch on each of these components. With that said, I will introduce Jay Burnett, who will tell you a little bit about his role within the department, as well as show you the first engagement tool for which he did a lot of the heavy lifting. Then I'll follow up and briefly touch on the other three.
Hello, Mayor and Council. It's great to be here today. As Kathy said, I'm Jay Burnett. I'm a rising senior in industrial design at Georgia Tech. I was first introduced to community development in Alpharetta through the Alpha Loop project last spring. They brought me on as an intern this year to work on design principles and design thinking in the comp plan process. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the use of Typeform in the pre-survey for the comp plan planning process. And the reason we are doing a pre-survey is 3 reasons. One, to gather and analyze citizens' thoughts on things relevant to the comp plan, so we can have that when we go into making what we're going to put into the document. To increase awareness in the population of the fact that we're doing a comp plan and the planning process that goes into that, and then that the citizens feel more engaged and that they have had a say in the final results. Why are we using Typeform? Typeform is a new software that we're using this year. It's the survey software, and among the main reasons we're choosing to use the software is that it has a question-by-question format. Some surveys can provide lists of questions on one page, 30 questions to a page, and it can get inundating. And having one question a page is very calming, and it makes people more likely to finish the survey. The second reason is that it allows us to do something called logic jumps. Logic jumps allow us to have different questions play after certain questions answered one way or another. So that, for example, if someone lives in Alpharetta, they'll get a different set of questions from someone who does not live in Alpharetta and only works here. Lastly, they have integrations with analytic tools that we can use to take the data that we get from the survey and then put it to better use and figure out which data is important to us. And this survey is live now. We've got around 150 responses already, and then it will be closing around August 10th. Thank you.
So for the next tool that we're going to go over, I'm going to touch on a tool called Mentimeter. While, as Jay described, Typeform is really a deep dive into a lot of the question and answers that we feel the community can give us. Mentimeter is really fun, kind of high-level, engaging, real-time with audiences. So it's important, obviously, with what's going on in the world, and with no-touch engagement, we want to be connected with the community. We want to get feedback. We want to have meetings and still be able to pose questions and have input. And so this gives a good opportunity to do so because it's using a cell phone. So we're able to limit the touching of surfaces and still elicit some good feedback. These are just 3 of the dozen or so different templates that Mentimeter can generate. They're really fun and engaging graphically. So as part of tonight's meeting, we've got a fun little demo here that you guys are, and we will open up a live, this is a live question. So you're posed with a question. There is a code or a link that you were sent that's got a couple questions on there, and we're just choosing what are your 3 favorite sports teams. So if you guys wouldn't mind taking a second to answer that, this is just going to generate on the fly and is a really good example of how this can garner some neat feedback. Yeah, we're going now, yeah.
Oh, I already responded to mine when I got the email.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I did. I deleted so we could start fresh. So you don't have to redo it, but if you want to, you can. We knew we'd get some Georgia representation, but it's good to see another Packer fan in the house. So I gotta. So it's just one question with the 3, and that's when you hit it and it doesn't do anything. It's not coming up. Gotcha. Okay, so I'll yeah, we'll look at that. But it's not going through. Gotcha. I don't know, is it pulling in from the?
It was, and then once you started that,
Okay. Well, yeah, if you guys, it's not pulling up on the screen, but we're getting the live feedback of various teams. And so the purpose of this is to be able to set up something to passively collect live time information and feedback and really test the barometer of a room. If someone comes to a meeting and we ask a question, why are you here? What element of the comp plan most interests you? To be able to gather what that input is, and a lot of times it might be different than what we assume. So it provides a neat way to generate a real fun engagement with the audience and to gather what they're picking up and why they're there. So that's the first tool we have going on. The second one is, or the third one, is map.social, which I don't know if this one, James, if it's picking up still.
there we go.
Yeah, this is a map-based collector of information, and the fun thing with this one is we can define what the legend is. We can define those questions. It allows people to, with the click of a mouse, basically paint the map as a canvas for their ideas. Any kind of feedback. So that's, we'll see if it.
Can the public add any picture on there they want?
Well, we can screen,
Okay, good.
like a buffer for that.
Just checking.
Every time you go out?
Every time I go out, it's, okay. Well, I'll stay within PowerPoint. Yeah, so that one's really neat. It's a click of a button. You don't have to be a map whiz to enter information there. And then lastly, we have story maps, which are really going to be a web-based repository for all kinds of information regarding the plan. So that's in a nutshell. These are the 4 different tools that we're looking to leverage. And yeah, with that wraps up our presentation. If there are any questions, comments, or concerns, we'll be happy to answer them if we can. Thank you.
Any questions from council at this point? Well, I'll just say congratulations. I wasn't on council 10 years ago, but I did participate. And man, you've come a long way. I think we're sure to get a lot more public information and feedback than we did 10 years ago. And I know back then it was a lot more challenging having to mail things and find people that could use dial-up to still get on the internet. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this process. It should be much better this time. Thank you. If that's it, we'll go ahead and wrap up this item. There's no vote on this tonight. We were just kicking off this campaign, making sure that the public's aware of what's going on. If there's anyone here that would like to come forward and comment about it at this point, feel free, but you'll have almost a year to do so. So there's no rush to the mic today, but thank you. Seeing no one come forward, I'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, Ben. So the next item up on the public hearing item agenda for this evening is PH-20-08 Code of Ordinances text amendments, the litter ordinance. Mr. Woodman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item before you is an amendment to the Code of Ordinances related to the litter code. Alpharetta, as part of the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District, is required to adopt policies, ordinances, and regulations to match the jurisdictions within the district. And the proposed changes that are before you this evening are to the definition of litter and to the violation fine amounts. And those changes match the model ordinance of the district. And with that, I'll conclude the presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions from council on this item? Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
Do we need to read the changes of the text?
Not of the text, Mr. Mayor, but the title of the ordinance.
Thank you, sir. If you'd please do so.
An ordinance to amend Article 4, Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend the definition of litter, to amend violation fine amounts, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other questions now that it's been read? Trying to stretch it out because we seem to have lost our Mayor Pro Tem here for a moment, but we may have to go ahead and continue to take the vote in his absence. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-20-08 Code of Ordinances text amendment, litter ordinance, and the ordinances read by Mr. Stacy.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Richard, a second by Councilman Burnett. Any discussion? Councilman Heights.
I just pulled up this code section, OCGA 16-7-51. Subpart 6 is a reference to hazardous waste, in quotes, as opposed to the term waste, in quotes. Will that make any difference in terms of its interpretation?
I don't believe so, but give me that code section one more time.
Yeah, I'm looking at the red line. It's on Exhibit A, page 126 in my packet. And the code section's OCGA 16-7-51. And there's a reference as to those things that are not quote unquote waste, as that term is defined in paragraph 6 of that section. And I just pulled it up on my iPhone here, and subparagraph 6 is hazardous waste. If it makes no difference in terms of its interpretation or enforcement, neither here nor there, but I thought I'd ask before we.
I do not believe so, no.
Stephen, just to follow up on that question, we're simply complying with the state ordinance, is that correct?
Correct. It's to reform the ordinance to the state requirements.
Okay. Any other questions from council before we call for a vote? So we do have a motion by Councilwoman Richard to approve PH-20-08 Code of Ordinances text amendments, litter ordinance as read by the city attorney, and we had a second by Councilman Burnett. All those in favor of the motion as read, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the public hearing portion of tonight's agenda. We'll move on to the old business portion of tonight's meeting. We have two items on that portion of tonight's meeting agenda, and the first one is PH-18-16, Unified Development Code Text Amendments, Historic Preservation Ordinance. This is the second reading. Ms. Cook, you have the floor.
There are no changes since the first reading. Councilman Binder had actually asked us to do some additional research, so we haven't finished that yet, so there's no additional changes.
Thank you. Any questions from council at this time? And since it is the second reading, there's no public comment on this item. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, we need to read the title again.
Thank you, sir. I did forget that. I appreciate it. Please read the title.
An ordinance to amend Article 2 of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend the criteria for designation of historic properties, to amend the incentives available to designated historic properties, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. And now that we've read the title, I'll go ahead and call for a motion again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll offer a motion to approve PH-18-16 Unified Development Code Text Amendments, Historic Preservation Ordinance, and the ordinance title is read by Mr. Stacy.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. So all those in favor of the motion to approve PH-18-16 Unified Development Code Text Amendments, this Historic Preservation Ordinance as read by Mr. Stacy, please vote yes. Otherwise, please vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Second item up under old business for this evening is an ordinance to amend Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages of the City Code to add a new article providing for the licensing of distilleries. This is also the second reading, and it was sponsored by myself and Councilmember Merkel. Ms. Cobb, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item was presented at the June 22nd City Council meeting, and there have been no changes made since that reading.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council at this time? If not, I'll ask Mr. Stacy to read the title of this ordinance as well.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Chapter 3, parenthetical alcoholic beverages of the Code of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to add a new Article 19 providing for the licensing of distilleries, to provide for an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. That being done, if there's no questions from council at this time, I'll go ahead and call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion to approve the ordinance to amend Chapter 3 of the Alcohol Beverage of the City Code, a new article providing for the licensing and distilling as presented tonight by Mr. Stacy.
We have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Councilwoman Richard. Any discussion? I'll just thank Ms. Cobb for her efforts in getting this done. I appreciate it. So I'll go ahead and call for a vote on an ordinance to amend Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages of the City Code to add a new article providing for the licensing of distilleries. This is the second reading. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the old business for tonight, and we'll move on to the new business items. We have several of these, and I'll go ahead and begin with the first item, item A, which is Board and Commission appointments. And I just want to formally reappoint the chairman of the Recreation Commission, Chairman Dennis Mitchell, to the Rec Commission. This is my appointee in that role. He's done a tremendous job, and I appreciate his dedication and his leadership in that role in the past, and look forward to continuing to work with him in the future. Second item up on the new business agenda is the design and project management services for Old Milton Parkway widening. Mr. Sisevich.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is one of our T-Splosh projects. It's the Old Milton Parkway Widening project. We've allocated, as part of the T-Splosh program, $5 million towards Old Milton. This is a request to spend approximately $2,161,400 to AECOM to perform the design services of the contract, and an additional $638,600 to Atkins to perform project management as well as right-of-way acquisition process. This project is going to be matched with GDOT of approximately $25 million for construction services. So we're going to give $5 million towards design. We're responsible for all design and right-of-way. I want to stress that we're doing everything we can to keep it within that $5 million. If it goes to $5.1 million, we are responsible for that additional $100,000. Our role is design and right-of-way. We got to follow the GDOT's PDP process. PDP stands Plan Development Process. It is the federal guideline process. I know President Trump made an announcement earlier in the week stating that he was going to relax some of the restrictions. We have not received formal word that that would apply to this project or not. We've also been working with GDOT trying to fast track this project. Our end goal for this is to have the project designed, right-of-way acquired, and construction accomplished by the time the express lanes open up on Georgia 400, which will be 2027 of some months. So that's our target date. 3 to 5 years for design. That is strictly we have to follow the federal design process. We have environmental work to do. We have noise study to do. We have ecological studies to do. Lots of studies before we get into the fund design process. So it'll be a journey, but we'll keep everyone updated.
Do we have any questions from council at this time? Councilwoman Richard.
Pete, what is the current width of the median right now on Old Milton Parkway? The center
It's,
landscape median?
I want to say it's about 40 to 60 feet. That's where all the right of way will come from.
And we're looking to take it down to 16 feet? Is that what the...
So 16 feet, add another 20, 40, 28 feet to that, because that's where we're widening the lanes from. So 16, 24, 30, so it's a good bit. Our initial plan, if you recall, was to utilize the right turn lanes for the additional, and then landscape the median with a little more landscaping. Unfortunately, due to the existing condition of the asphalt, pavement thickness, the right turn lane, and the right-of-way cost, just right-of-way alone was going to be about another $10 to $12 million to the project. So this is the most cost-effective.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, Pete. I know you have put in a tremendous amount of work over the past few years, and I appreciate that. It has been a major undertaking just to get this on Georgia Department of Transportation's radar, and I appreciate that very much.
It's been a team effort. I know administration, mayor, council, you've been in meetings. Bob's been in meetings with us, so we're there. We're getting there.
Absolutely, but it's a nice one to check off the list is getting it on the process, so we appreciate it. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there is anyone here that would like to come forward and speak about the design project management services for Old Milton Parkway widening, now is your opportunity to come forward. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we please approve the AECOM's proposal in the amount of not to exceed $2,161,400 for the design of the Old Milton Parkway widening improvements from North Point Parkway to Kimball Bridge, and approve Atkins' proposal in the amount not to exceed $638,600 for the project management services for Old Milton Parkway widening improvements project, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilmember Burnett. So I will go ahead and call for the vote, but I will say it's very appropriate that the two of you made the motion and seconded the motion, because it was at a meeting after about 2 years of negotiations with 3 mayors involved and several different council groups to get this hammered out. And so the 3 of us were able to go down to GDOT earlier this year and come to a verbal agreement that somehow was managed to hold up through all the chaos in the ensuing past few months. And it's really an interesting process when you have a major project like this that involves 4 entities, actually. It's Forsyth County, City of Johns Creek, City of Alpharetta, and the State Department of Transportation and stuff like that. So, actually, yes, please.
And I just wanted to thank Pete, Bob, you guys, and I know Merkel, Councilmember Merkel went down there earlier with us, and, you know, it's a testament to the relationships that you guys build over, we come and go, and to sit there one day and have them get the shovel out and say, if you guys will contribute a little bit more money to Mcginnis Ferry Road, we may just pave Old Milton Parkway clear to Gwinnett County. And we said, I think that's a good deal, thanks. So, it was, it's definitely probably been the most successful day I've had on this council. I definitely didn't expect that when they said that. So thanks to both of you and you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
And I think we'd be remiss, Pete, thank you for all your work, as the mayor said, but also Russell McMurray, heading up GDOT. We've seen a tremendous improvement since his leadership there as far as being willing to flex and work with Alpharetta. And so I'd like to recognize him, his team, and all the team at GDOT for being willing to flex and do those kind of creative solutions that help us all out. So thank you.
Any other comments from council? All right, all those in favor of approving the design and project management, the design and project management services for Old Milton Parkway widening, please vote yes. That amount is, I was just looking, that's small. I should have warned my readers. The amount to approve AECON's proposal in the amount up to $2,161,400, and the amount for
$638.
up to $638,600 for the project management services. All those in favor of that, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, sir. And next, we have another success on the T-Splosh projects and multiple municipalities and authorities involved. Director Sasevich, would you please discuss the Mcginnis Ferry Road widening intergovernmental agreement?
Mayor, you alluded to it earlier, so Councilmember Burnett about the Mcginnis Ferry project. Well, here we are. There was a lot of moving of the cards, if you want to say, and a lot of working through this with the additional dollars that have been requested towards Mcginnis Ferry is how we were able to handle the Old Mill Parkway with Georgia Department of Transportation. This has 4 agencies, GDOT, Forsyth County, the City of Alpharetta, of course, and Johns Creek. And the IJ tonight for you is to have us move forward with that project. So the design is 90% accomplished by Forsyth County. Going back a couple years, Mayor Pro Tem, you handed a check for $500,000 to Forsyth County for the design at council's direction. And so tonight before you, that's why the agreement is $8.4 million for us listed in there. We already had the $500,000 written, but we are contributing $8.9 towards this project. We have already started receiving appraisals from Forsyth County. Forsyth County will be doing the title research and the appraisals for all the parcels within the right-of-way. Alpharetta will be obtaining all the right-of-way. I want to stress that we're not having Forsyth County obtain the right-of-way. They're just doing all of the research for us. We'll get the right-of-way team together and start going door to door and talking to people and working on the agreements along the corridor. So that will start immediately. We do have a deadline for acquisition of right-of-way. It's March of 2022, which seems pretty far away, but really it's right around the corner for how long it takes us to get through all these parcels. And just to refresh everyone's scope, this is from the Ronald Reagan Parkway all the way to, for us, Douglas Road. That's within city limits. It goes further to the east all the way to Sargent Road and the widening of both sides. So GDOT's contributing 23, Fulton County's 23 million, and GDOT's going to do another 19.8 million. So
I think you meant Forsyth County.
Forsyth, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Didn't want to get a call from Chairman Pitts.
No, that's just, thank you. So we're moving forward. The IGA has been also forwarded to Johns Creek, so they're reviewing it and they'll get it going as well. So it's been a team effort from day one on this project through several years as well.
Things are complex when you're working with multiple entities, but big reward. So we appreciate your efforts on all of this as well. So, do we have any other questions from council at this time? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak on the Mcginnis Ferry Road widening, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask the council to please approve the intergovernmental agreement with Johns Creek, Forsyth County regarding the funding and project responsibilities associated with the Mcginnis Ferry Road widening project and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
And it might be nice to just go ahead and stipulate specifically, then that was a total of up to $8.9 million,
That's correct.
including the $500,000 that you so generously gave to Forsyth County several years ago.
We.
I wasn't on at that moment. Okay, is everyone clear on the motion? If so, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. If you approve of the motion, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Congratulations, Pete. That's a big lift. So the fourth item up on the new business agenda this evening is the Equipment Refresh CIP 2021. Randy Bundy, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This first agenda item is a request to provide the annual replacement of technology for all the departments in the city for the fiscal year of 2021. Approximately 124 PCs, 15 cellular phones, 78 iPhones, and 58 iPads are scheduled for the annual replacement. The refresh of the IT equipment is scheduled throughout the fiscal year and is allocated first to the most essential pieces of equipment. And we're going to work in very close coordination with the Department of Finance and our city administrator to make sure that we manage the expenditures through the fiscal year to reflect any budgetary impacts that we may be having. And at the request of the Finance Department, we decided that we will present $150,000, which is one half the amount for the full annual allotment. That was approved in the budget to be approved tonight. And then later we can come back maybe mid-year and we'll see if we can get the second part of that or how much we may be able to do. So it's being managed very carefully. So our request is that you approve the request to provide the annual replacement of technology for all city departments in FY 2021 in the amount of $150,000 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from council? Councilman Binder.
Yes, sir. With just a little bit of the financial uncertainty, I know we've asked this a couple of times previous years, but the turnaround time of replacement of iPads, iPhones, have you looked at that to maybe we can extend it out a year? Or?
We've, a year or two ago, we actually did extend it out from 2 years to 3 years. The industry standard for businesses is approximately 26 months. So we're at the outer edge of that extension. We have found that we are able to manage that okay. We do have some devices that come up early that we have to replace because they need to be replaced before the 36 months is up, but it's not been unmanageable. So both for iPhones and iPads, we extended them a full year. Also for our laptops in the last 2 years, we have extended them to full 4 years along with the desktops because we have gone to solid state drives, which are much more reliable. And we found that we can extend that extra year for the laptops. So we have tried to be very, very prudent about the refresh cycle.
And then how did you select for the first half? Is it based on the age of the machine, vulnerability?
Our staff has a spreadsheet, which you've seen there, and we can go through and look at those and see that the ones that we replaced the latest, or if we find that there is some issues with some of the machines, we will prioritize those first. So we'll try to work with the departments to make sure we get the most needy replacements taken care of first in the budget, and we'll proceed from there. If we're unable for this year to complete our cycle, then those other ones will be pushed into the front for next year.
Perfect. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for being flexible and working with finance.
Thank you.
Time.
Any other questions from council at this time? Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the equipment refresh for the capital improvement program of 2021, now's your opportunity to come forward. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a recommendation to approve the request from IT for the annual technology refresh for the fiscal year of 2021 in an amount not to exceed $150,000 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Councilman Burnett and a second by Councilwoman Richard. And that is to approve the request to provide for the annual replacement of technology for all city departments in fiscal year 2021 in the amount up to $150,000 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents. If there's no other comments, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. Please vote yes if you approve of the motion, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Mr. Bundy, you have the next item as well, and that is the Esri software, Geographic Information System, Maintenance and Licensing Agreement. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Gilpin. This GIS maintenance agenda item and licensing agreement is funded in the 2021 budget. This program allows the city to deploy as many licenses to desktops and servers as needed at no additional cost. The agreement is for 3 years at a fixed cost that is renewed annually. So we're asking you to award the Esri as the vendor to provide the Geographic Information Systems Maintenance Agreement for 3 years at a fixed cost that is renewed annually for the city of Alpharetta in the amount of $60,500, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents. So this is a 3-year agreement with 1-year annual payments.
Any questions from council on this item? Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on the Esri software item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward at this time, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract to Esri for GIS maintenance for 3 years in an amount not to exceed $60,500 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
We have a motion by Councilman Burnett, a second by, was that Councilman Merkel? I wasn't looking, I wasn't sure. So we have a motion and a second to award Esri as the vendor to provide the Geographic Information Systems Maintenance Agreement for 3 years at a fixed cost that is renewed annually for the city of Alpharetta in the amount of $60,500 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents. All those in favor of that motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Thanks, sir. We also have one more item for Mr. Bundy, and that is Microsoft Azure Cloud Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Gilvin. This request is for the estimated cloud data storage costs in lieu of on-site servers and storage equipment that the city has used. Cloud services such as Microsoft Azure offer the ability to move virtual servers in the on-site data center to the cloud, providing in some cases economy of scale and security that is of higher value. This migration of servers and storage will free the city from having to fund larger server and data storage equipment initiatives periodically through the capital budget and be able to manage the consumption of our information technology systems more efficiently. So therefore, I ask that you approve This request to provide for Microsoft Azure Cloud Services, IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service, using the statewide contract SWC 9999 SPD T201900814-0002 for cloud solutions for all city departments in the fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $150,000, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from council? Thank you very much, Mr. Bundy. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone that came out just to speak about this Azure contract, now's your chance to come forward. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request to provide Microsoft Azure Cloud Services using the statewide contract 99999 SPD T20190814002 for cloud solutions for the city departments for fiscal year 2021 in the amount not to exceed $150,000, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Burnett, a second by Councilman Merkel. All those in favor of the motion to approve that motion as read for the Microsoft Azure Cloud Services in an amount up to $150,000, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. Up to $150,000, and it does pass unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Bundy. I appreciate you keeping us running.
Yes, sir.
Next item up on the new business agenda is the contract renewal with Peachtree Government Relations.
Mayor and Council, yes, and before you now is a respectfully recommend the extension of our contract with Peachtree Government Relations for a full year, $3,000 a month. The funds are budgeted. Y'all will recall after the 2019 legislative session, we discussed contracting with a lobbying firm. We'd have the best interest of the city day in and day out at the Capitol. We brought to you this firm in September, and you approved it for 9 months, October through June. So before you tonight is the extension of that. You know, I do know Don Bolia. I think all y'all know Don now. He does a good job for us. He knows his way around the Capitol, not only in the Capitol, but with state departments. And he gives us heads up on things we just don't know about at the state that are very helpful to us. So with that said, if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Any questions from council at this time? Councilman Burnett.
Bob, do you feel like Don's services are better than what we were spending with GMA?
Well, I'll say that Don's focus is on Alpharetta, and GMA's, their focus is on 500 cities. So, yes. Yeah, I'll say that.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions from council at this time? Thank you, Mr. Regas. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
However, if there is someone that would like to come forward and speak on the contract renewal with Peachtree Government Relations, now's your chance to come forward and speak. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion tonight to continue or extend the contract renewal with Peachtree Government Relations as presented by Mr. Regas here tonight.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Any discussion? Council. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I do think Mr. Boya and his group have saved us a lot of money and found money that we would not have otherwise have, which far exceeds the amount that we're paying per month or per year. So I'm grateful for his services and welcome him as one of our team members.
Councilman Burnett.
Yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to bring somebody in that can look out for us in a bunch of places, because having somebody to go to the Georgia Department of Transportation, follow up behind you, and have solid conversations, or go to Fulton County and advocate for $2.5 million for CARES Act money is, it wouldn't have happened without him. So I think it's been really, our ROI is really, really solid. So thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comment? Councilman Binder.
I think it's been fantastic, and the value add has been there, especially when working with some of the other agencies. I just hope we can start using it more, maybe when we do our mid-year retreat of, okay, legislative priorities, start having a voice more in the Golden Dome of what we'd like to see get done and what hasn't been done in some time. So it's just been beneficial to have a voice for Alpharetta over there. So that'd be good.
Any other comments from council? Then I'll go ahead and call for a vote on the motion to approve the contract renewal with Peachtree Government Relations in an amount up to $36,000. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, sir. So that will wrap up the new business portion of tonight's meeting. We'll move on to the workshop. Workshop tonight is Unified Development Code text amendments, Alpharetta Downtown Code, murals, special event facilities, temporary uses, and fences. Director Cook, you have the floor.
This is really a hodgepodge, just like it sounds. It's kind of a little bit all over the place, but I'll just walk you through each one, and then you can provide comment. And of course, this is a workshop, so there won't be a vote. We're just looking for some guidance on what we're doing here. So one of the items is just to change to the, actually to add a definition of mural. And this is a definition that we discussed with Sam, with the city attorney. It's just adding a hand-painted, hand-tiled, or digitally printed restorative image on the exterior wall of the building. And we went back and forth. We gave him different mural definitions that we had found. This is the one that he was comfortable with. So we wanted to make sure that we got that into the Unified Development Code. The other definition, we don't have a definition for special event facility, so that's the other change that we're proposing is to put that in the code. And then we also went through and then we recommended that at most all of the different zoning districts to put it as a conditional use. Not allowed by right, but to put it as a conditional use. Of course, we didn't put it in any residential districts as a conditional use except for AG, because you could have it could be a barn wedding facility or something that's located in AG. So we put it as conditional and made sure that we put the definition in there. Prior to this definition, if we had something like that come up, we either had to use a theater or places of assembly. So this is more or less us trying to fix kind of what we were trying to fix, because we didn't have the definition in there.
Ms. Cook, if I could too, I probably should have mentioned at the beginning, since this is a workshop and there's a lot of different items, I would recommend, the whole purpose is to give feedback. So as Ms. Cook goes along, maybe after each one, if you have any comments or questions, let's do that. Councilman Hypes.
That being the case, I'd like to back up to murals. I was curious as to why it's on the exterior wall of a building. We're going to have murals, for example, I think about Marietta Street over here by the old Benjamin Paint Store. Mm-hmm. There's been discussion about murals along the Alpha Loop. Is there a specific reason or need to limit it to painting or tile on the exterior of a building as opposed to some other manner in which it would be depicted?
That's a good point. We can research that and see. So you're talking about if it was something that on a retaining wall, could be a detention pond wall, anything like that.
Carson Kitchen.
Yeah, to make sure that it's not,
Carson Kitchen.
Fine.
I happen to like the mural. But that's the nature of art. Some people like it, some people don't. But to me, it looks like it's on a wall or a fence and not necessarily on a building.
it's a fence.
So I don't know if it's too limiting in terms of how the term would be used within the code itself, but just wanted to bring
Yeah, I
it to
think
your
that's
attention.
a good point, that we should look at expanding that. Any other comments on mural or special event facility?
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Thank you. I appreciate you adding the mural part, and it could possibly, and I appreciate John's comment. That's a good one, because there are landscape walls that we use that on, and that's a good addition to our city. So, thank you.
Any other comments about the murals? Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Okay.
Were there any other comments? What was the second one again? Yes, the definition of special events and the addition of special events. Any thoughts on that matter? I didn't have any concerns about it. I think we do need to define it, so I'm fine with that.
Okay, I will move on to supplemental regulations, and of course, if you have any comments about what I just spoke about, we can go back to that. But we're looking under 2.3.2, temporary uses. Right now, we have a lot of nonprofits that will ask to have different seasonal events, and the process now is that it has to go through council. So what we're proposing is that seasonal events associated as a part of a temporary use type of permit, it's still a permit application, but seasonal events associated with a not-for-profit for a period not to exceed 75 days, authorization may not be granted more than 2 times per year per property. I think if you think about what we had, even with North Fulton Charities, I think it was just recently that was at the old Thomasville furniture site. But the way the code is currently written, they would have to go through a process through council. So this would just enable staff to give those permits, no more than 2 times per year.
Any thoughts from council?
Used the Thomasville facility for back to school and also for Thanksgiving/Christmas. I think this is a great way to cut through some red tape and expedite some things without, so I applaud you for doing this.
Yeah, just trying to make the process a little bit simpler.
Absolutely. I think it's nice every once in a while to go to do a little house cleaning like this to make it easier for the public to do what they need to do and for us not to have to make them go through public hearing processes each and every time and the expense of doing so. So I have no objection as it is. And if at any time we find it becoming abused or overused, then we can always go back and address it. So I would be supportive of it. Any other comments from council? All right.
The other supplemental regulation we've had in the last couple of months, a lot of different fences that were built in the wrong location. So we're trying to get some better social media, better guidelines out, and putting some different graphics together to help people because we don't require permits, fencing permits. But one of the things that's confusing is if you look at B, it says that the fences and walls shall be placed at least 5 feet from required buffers currently. So people didn't think a landscape strip was a buffer. So they thought if it didn't specifically say buffer, that they didn't have to have a setback. So we're just clarifying that it's landscape strips and buffers. And then, of course, the reason why we have the 5 feet away is if you do have a required landscape strip or a buffer, if there's work that close within that 5 feet, it could destroy tree roots and destroy the buffer while they're installing that, especially something like a privacy fence. We're also looking at D, the appearance. Adding, a privacy fence along a public right-of-way shall only be permitted when the required landscape strip and associated landscape material is provided. You may see a lot of different, the 6-foot privacy fences that are along private roads, so public roads. So what we're saying is if you install the fence, you also have to put landscaping along that fence. We also have a comment in here for your consideration that a privacy fence shall be prohibited in a front yard. So of course, and here's just a little graphic to show where that is. So in the front, as long as the fence stops at the side, that's not considered the front. But in the front yard, we would look at restrictions on privacy fences. And if they do have a fence in the front yard, it's something more like a 3-board, 4-board, horse fence, picket fence. You can still have fences, but it's just not a solid privacy fence. So that's something we put in here for your consideration, whether we should be allowing privacy fences in the front yard.
Councilman Hypes, and I believe Councilman Binder was next.
So I have a clearer understanding about what is a privacy fence and what is a front yard. Over here at Boise, when you come walking down Haynes Bridge, and there's the brick with the ivy, not the brick, but the wall with the ivy. Is that a privacy fence in their front yard?
Yes, so that would not be permitted unless council approved it.
And that would be by way of a variance?
Correct. And, it's certainly something that you could look at. Are there some types of privacy fences that could be allowed in the front setback? Or should there be no, solid privacy fences in the front yard?
I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea, but has it been an issue or a problem? Has your department had to address folks who want to put a fence?
Well, it's allowed now, so we do have some privacy fences in front yards. I guess they're more like cedar. They're not the concrete or the hard coat stucco, but yes, we have that.
Councilman Binder.
When you say buffer, is that including stream buffer?
It would, and currently it already says buffer, but we would also add landscape strip.
Okay. And then, I'm glad Councilmember Hypes asked if there's been issues. I can understand it kind of where I am, where it's in the middle of a neighborhood, me adding a front yard fence would be out of whack, but like some of these homes that are now on busier streets where they weren't busy streets, and so you're trying to keep a dog or some kids or for some reason having that buffer from a main, I guess that'd be my concern. I don't want them to come for a variance for that.
Sure, and then if we could look at, right now we're saying that you could have a fence, a 4-foot fence, but it can't be a solid privacy fence. I mean, even picket fences, they have gaps in between them.
Okay.
So it couldn't be a solid privacy fence. But, if you want to exclude downtown, I don't know if that's something that you're thinking about, but that's another option.
Some of the homes on Rucker or some on Mayfield, Mid-Broadwell,
And most of those on Rucker, it's the side yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not the front yard, but it could be the front yard in some cases. But most of the time, it's the rear yard and the side. And from the graphic, you could still have the privacy up to the front edge of that setback. It just can't go past the front of the house.
Would the city trump your declaration of covenants, or when they plat it?
For me personally, or?
Yeah, like if you're in a subdivision.
We don't have any, so it just would look really out of place, but it would make sense. It's just something to think about of how to make it a little bit easier if it would make sense for them to put a front fence in. And I do like what you're saying, that the picket fence that could keep animals and.
Right, and you can have a 3-board, 4-board horse fence that actually has that chicken wire. You can't see the wire, but it still would keep a dog or animal. And it's just not something you see as a solid surface. you know, and we could exclude chain link or solid privacy fence in the front yard.
Councilman Hypes, excuse me. You said exclude chain link,
Oh,
not require it.
thank God.
Is there a definition of privacy fence? So that term is dropped into that code section.
Yeah, we
But
can
is there,
do that.
pardon me?
We can do that.
Well, for example, the picket fence, I mean, a lot of people think the white picket fence along Main Street is something to aspire towards. And then you start talking about different types of fences and you drop in the term privacy fence. I'm not quite sure I even know where a permissible fence ends and a prohibited fence would begin.
Okay. We can, we can put a definition of what privacy is because, like, you know, and even when I was looking at different picket fences, some of them were pretty, you know, close together, almost like a privacy fence. So we can, but most of them had the gaps. So we can certainly define that better. And then we'll include a graphic as part of the UDC change. So it's really, well, that's part of the problem. We found that, you know, we know what it says, but we haven't done a great job of getting the information out to the public. So we're trying to organize it and get it out in a meaningful way.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. I appreciate you putting this on there. I know there's been a lot of issues on it on Cumming Street. And there's not only does a complete privacy fence present issues as far as turning in and out, but also that buffer. You can see what's coming down the street. But also imagine in a neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA and one neighbor moves in and they want to put a privacy fence in their front yard and there's nothing prohibiting it. You've got this nice green expanse lawn throughout your neighborhood and the backyards are fenced in, which are fine, but then it breaks it up and it just cheapens the property. It looks awful for all the neighbors and that's what we were seeing down some of these main corridors. And if we can stop it and just put see-through fences or picketed fences or things like that, even Boise, they weren't supposed to go as high as what they did with those fences, as I recall. It blocked a lot of the human scale when you're walking by there. No offense to who might live in Boise, but nonetheless, I think this is a good thing. Other cities have done it where they put the fences across. Then you've got one fence that doesn't match the next fence. There's no landscaping. I just hate for Alpharetta to go down that route when we can prevent it early on. But
well, right now, you know, like what you're talking about, right now you could put a 6-foot privacy fence in the front yard.
As some have, yeah.
So we don't have a height limitation on the front yard or materials, so that's just, you know, and in general, this one of the council men was talking about, we don't have a lot of that, but when we do have it, it looks very unusual. So it's something we're just trying to address and get your comments.
Thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am on board with the chain link fences in front yards, but I believe you buy the land. I don't believe you buy the view. And for you to govern what somebody, I can't say you, I don't want to single you out. For you to say what somebody 5 streets over can or can't do in a non-HOA governed neighborhood, I disagree with. That's just.
I hope your neighbor puts up a chain link fence in their front yard. You might feel differently about it.
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will yield my time.
Any other comments from council? I would just say that I do believe that some reasonable restrictions would be helpful. And even if we had restrictions, someone could come forward and apply for a variance or something like that. Yes. But I think it's nice to have some type of standards so the neighbors kind of know what to expect around them, and then we can make decisions on a case-by-case basis. Councilman Binder.
On that, I agree with that sentiment. Would it be possible to not go through a variance, but through code enforcement, appeal?
Or, yeah, we have parts of that in the code. where, it's either the engineer can approve a different type of a road, sidewalk width. So we can look at that so that it's not as big of a issue to jump through if it's something that makes sense. Yeah, and we've seen some nice, where it's like brick columns in a downtown that's, like you said, it's close to the street, and then they may have a little bit of privacy fence, brick columns with lighting, and a lot of times that's where the lighting is, along the sidewalk. So we can look at some exemptions for that.
Councilman Burnett, I believe you had some other comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To clarify a statement, I am fine with including chain link fences in something that the city has the ability to govern or apply for a variance. I wanted to clarify that because the pro tem was right. I heard when I rethought about what I said. I do think that we should restrict that, but I don't want to be too heavy-handed just because he doesn't like something 5 streets over. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Right. And then moving on to the Alpharetta Downtown Code, a couple of things within the code. The first part is just kind of clean up. We put downtown district when we should have put central business district, so nothing really changes in that first paragraph. The building materials, that's where we have the proposed change. And that one's wrong, and I've marked on mine. I'm gonna have to put it up here with my notes. Let me read through it. The building materials, we're looking at changing under number 1, adding unpainted brick surfaces shall not be painted unless the applicant establishes 2 different things. The painting is absolutely necessary to restore or preserve the brick or stone. And B, the color and texture of replacement brick or stone cannot be matched with that of the existing brick or stone surface. And then it says, if the applicant establishes A or B, painting shall be limited to a diluted wash appropriately applied, such as milk paint or a lime-based paint. Natural stone surfaces shall not be painted. And so I think, and just to put that up there, it's we had heard over the last couple months about the painting of brick. It was suggested, maybe from Mayor Pro Tem on this one, to look at the brick. If we do allow painting the surfaces, in what type of instances should we allow it, not allow it? We spent a lot of time with Tracy Ward, asking him what's been done in other cities. And so what you see here is actually what he gave us that exists in other historic districts. And he told us that basically a lot of the brick that's used that we have, and he named some of the spaces along Main Street, that brick's not high quality. So some brick may need to be painted because it's not high quality. He said that since Alfredo wasn't on the railroad, we weren't getting the best brick. So he had recommended that we allow the painted brick, it still has to go to Design Review Board, if it's not high quality brick as they decide, or they have an addition and they can't match it up. He also recommended that we don't use, that if they don't allow the new paints just completely cover the brick. It doesn't let the brick breathe. So he said if we do allow it, should be more of a milk-based paint. So it's more like a wash so the brick can still breathe. We also put new residential construction consisting of more than one detached house. Townhome building and condominium building shall have at least 50% of the dwelling units with 4-sided brick or stone. So if it's more than just a standalone home, then you would have to have 50%. So, if it's 2 in a new development that's rezoned, then one of those would have to have the brick, 4-sided brick. The only thing with this as it's written right now, if somebody had an individual home, just bought one lot and they built one house and they wanted it brick, this would not let them paint the brick. So I don't know if when we talked about this, if it was something more or less we wanted for new development that's more than just one standalone, or if we want to look at a case-by-case basis. So we kind of, tried to put some guidelines together, but looking for guidance on that.
So, and I'm trying to think, because I can see if it were a major development where most of the homes were the same floor plan or the same, but for example, this would apply to the 12, I think that's the name of that subdivision with the
12 on
custom
Canton.
homes.
Mhm.
So it would apply to them as well, even though they're individually designed and, okay.
It would. It would apply for, because they came in as they're one platted subdivision.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Councilmember Burnett?
I think, Kathy, you and I have talked about some of the mixed-use developments, or I would say office parks that are probably closer to end of life. I hate to use that term, but it's not coming back. About potentially looking at doing things that were single-family to attract a lower price point. When we start governing 50% brick houses across 27 square miles, I don't want to be in the business of that. I'm fine with downtown central business districts, but I bought a house that has cement siding, and it's, what Alpharetta today would deem somewhat attainable. And I'm proud of that. I don't want to be in the business of telling somebody who wants to buy one house on 3 acres that they have to build their house out of anything that any one of us desires. I hope that it meets a code that exists today and that we are reasonable. As these bills continue to get dropped in the legislature saying that we cannot govern building materials, we're picking a fight that someday we will lose by acting like jerks. And I think that it's important to maintain a standard without lowering your stats, but I don't want to tell people that they have to use milk-based paint based on something that any one of us likes, because we change. And you can change the code, but I think that by and large, less is more. Can you put you had B1 and B2, can you put those back up?
Sure. And then this is the central business district, which you can look at in a minute.
So can I just ask, just to clarify, what the building materials that we're speaking of tonight, right now, my understanding is applicable to the downtown area. So it's not applicable to the entire city.
Yet.
Well, I just want to make sure you understood that, because you were talking about office parks, and I certainly support what you're saying there, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that we're talking downtown district right now.
For clarification, it's all of that colored portion that you're showing us there, or is it part
Yes.
of that?
It's all of this portion, and the portion he mentioned is this, the central business is this dark purple color, whatever color that is,
Right, okay.
brownish, yeah.
Any other Councilman Heights?
I wasn't done.
Oh, okay. We'll come back to you then.
Well, I'd like to echo some of Councilman Burnett's comments, both as to the brick and to the painting. I feel like this is a attempted solution in search of a problem. I fail to perceive this as a problem for which it requires government intervention. I, for one, think the Kell building looks wonderful. And to me, it was somewhat pedestrian looking, and then they painted it, and I think it's a sharp looking building across the street from Citizen Soul. But to me, that's white brick. I don't know, maybe it fits some other definition, but what one person may like from a subjective point of view, another person may dislike, and vice versa. But most significantly is the people who are investing the money to build what they're building and to purchase what's being built. They're the ones with skin in the game. And I'm troubled by a bunch of local elected officials saying, you're the one putting the money in on these houses over on Thompson Street, but, we're going to tell you what they're going to look like. Well, these are million-dollar homes. That's their investment, and these are what people want to buy. 2 of these houses over on Haynes Bridge are painted white, and that's what they asked the builder to build. I believe they should have what they're asking for. And as to the use of brick or stone, I completely agree with Councilmember Burnett. This just drives up the price of homes to make it more and more unattainable, and just moves it out of one strata to the next strata. And if somebody in this district at the appropriate place wanted to build some homes or a couple of homes that are Cape Cod looking, and they want to spend the money on a builder to build that, if that's a permissible design, you're not going to put brick on a Cape Cod house. And I just think this is a little heavy-handed. I've done the research on what's happening at the legislature, and interestingly, it's happening in Texas also. And they're having great friction between municipalities and the Texas legislature about the same home builders pushing bills to deprive local municipalities of the right to have a say-so in terms of design. And the reason is it's a bit of an overreach by some of these municipalities, and it does affect the cost of the homes. That's the line the lobbyists are using in any event, is it affects the cost of the homes. So all of that said, my preference would be that we go a different direction. I'm having trouble with this.
Yeah, and this was, like I said, it was staff research of just looking at one solution for you to look at.
Councilman Binder?
Would something like this could be added to our design guidelines instead of to our UDC, or is that?
Well, the guidelines are just that. It's guidelines. It won't require anything. And then, of course, the design guidelines are for commercial buildings, non-residential. It could be it's for multifamily also, but not for single family.
Isn't that what we're trying to, I guess, some of the ones that maybe some are looking to change, it's more for multifamily?
Right. We did put a condition recently for the new approval on Thompson Street. So they're going to design review board, but they're just guidelines.
Well, I think like your section 2 is talking about multifamily or the townhome condominiums. And so that may go towards the guidelines. I'm really not seeing anything in here that I feel necessary to add. I think it's a point of view. Previous community before moving to Alpharetta, in Dallas, north of there was a city that everything was brick. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm scared of us turning into, is just monotony. And historically, we weren't a city built of brick houses. I would like to see it be okay and not be judged if there's a non-brick home, if it's built nicely. So it's just one person's opinion.
Mr. Burnett, did you have a follow-up comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The only other thing that I really wanted to add was when you add in subjectivity, 2 points, to what is high-quality brick. I don't know anything about buying bricks. And I venture to guess that most people know nothing about buying bricks. And the only other thing I would add to that is that if Paul Corley, Edward Andrews, or Warren Jolly, guys that come in front of us every couple times a year looking at projects, they're in the game to create a business, and they don't seem to be having any trouble selling really nice houses that aren't necessarily all four-sided brick. And I just don't want to get to a place where we are in the business of turning down a diversity of building type. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, did you have a comment?
I do have a comment, as you might expect I would. there's another side to look at another way to look at this whole thing. We don't allow vinyl siding. That's a subjective decision our city has made. We don't allow Butler buildings anymore in our city. That's a subjective decision. The reason we don't allow these things, and we don't allow trailers, we don't allow double wides, is because we want to protect the property values of those people who have invested great sums of money in their homes here. To suggest to a builder, some of you have suggested that we put it in the code if we want that. So if you don't want it, it's fine. But let's don't overlook all the people that have invested in our city and have used good quality materials. Because every developer, the reason states like Texas and Georgia are experiencing this is because the low-end builders don't want to require quality materials in neighborhoods. We want quality materials. I can't tell you how many times citizens have come to me and thanked me for trying to push for quality materials instead of something cheap that builders try and put in here all the time. They're going to do the least common denominator that they can charge the most for, and we've seen them do cheaper materials and still charge $800,000 for some of these townhomes. And my whole point is, if they're going to charge $800,000, build it out of brick or stone, something that's lasting, something that increases our property values, and something that for generations will continue to look nice and presentable for your community for years to come. Get the varied, I get the whole point that our mayor was making, and I agree. And I'm not going to name a subdivision, but every home in that new subdivision, it's all cookie cutter. It's the cheapest plan they could do, and they repeated it in all 60 homes. Same windows, same everything. Well, the neighborhood right next to it who did it differently and who stylized their homes differently, and every home is unique and different, they resent that neighborhood, and they should, because it looks like crap. And it's an $800,000 home, one right after the other. And I don't blame them for being upset about it. But the only way we can prevent that is to have the kind of codes that kind of define the city that we want to be. So if you don't want to support it, that's fine. But there's good reasoning to support it.
Any other comments from council? Ms. Cook, it seems like you may have a little work on this part,
Yes.
so
I'll
I
go
would
back
encourage
a little bit to the drawing board.
the council members to have some discussions and work with our liaison, Councilwoman Richard, to see if there's some common ground to make some improvements that we could all agree with before it comes forward as a business item.
Okay.
Was that the final change that you had to discuss?
This is the last one,
Okay.
and I have it up here to take
Yes,
a look
okay.
at. And it's actually we have heard from different council about the front setback, and they want to see more green space. So our proposal is to push the buildings back a little farther. Right now in DTC, which is downtown core, the main core of the downtown, it has a 0-foot minimum front yard setback, and it also has a 10-foot maximum. So what we're proposing is to change that to a 5-foot minimum with a 20-foot maximum. And of course, this would be Milton Avenue. This is, where the hotel is being built, Canton Street. So that's the downtown core. And then Dtmu, which is most of the zoning that you'll see along North and South Main Street in the future. Right now, it says 5-foot minimum front setback, 10-foot max. And of course, that's to get buildings close to the road so people feel it's pedestrian friendly walking around. Our proposal is to change the front yard to 10-foot minimum, 20-foot max. And again, nothing is zoned by right in the downtown, so they would have to come forward, of course, with the zoning, but we want them to plan on what that setback should have. We're also looking at a change to Dtmu. If you'll remember, we just recently had 100 North Main, and they came in originally wanting 4 stories. I don't even know if that went to council showing 4, but they went to council with 3 because, we knew that the desire on North and South Main was really for 3 stories. So what we're proposing is just to change that to the 3 stories, leave the downtown core at the 4 stories, but change the Dtmu to 3 stories. And I'll take any comment that you may have. Another thing I will bring up on this front yard setback that wasn't in your packet, but I'd like to ask your opinion on, is right now it says even though you may have a 10-foot front setback, you're allowed to let your porch, if there's a porch that's built, and this could be a commercial building or a residential building, can encroach 9 feet. So I think that's something else that we need to look at. So because if your porch is the entire width of the front of your house, then, and you have a 10-foot front setback, you know, then you're left with a foot. The reason it was written that way originally is to encourage porches, because a lot of times, just to get the maximum square footage to build a house, they're just going to make it, you know, flat at the 10-foot front setback. So the reason we had it that way was to encourage that porches, stoops, and that are added. But what we're proposing is to look at that, changing it, that a front porch can extend up to 50% into that front setback. And I'll put that language up here. And I know that wasn't in your packet, but when we were talking to the arborist, talking to our zoning administrator, he said that that's one of the big issues that he sees when it comes through, when he's reviewing plans, is that encroachment, which allows up to 9 feet in a front setback.
And just to clarify, when you're saying 9 feet into the 10-foot, that means you would have a porch 1 foot away from the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand that description. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Knapp.
Is there any way to alter the building heights as a part of this? Can we take 60 feet and can we make the max height lower, or has that ship sailed?
Any suggestions that you want?
Now's the time.
I'd like to make it lower, thank you.
Which area are you speaking of? Which?
In the downtown mixed use at 60 feet. That's one of the biggest complaints.
The mixed use we have it, our suggestion is going to 3 stories, 46 feet. And that's one of the changes that we're proposing.
So is that addressing what you're?
Is that to increase without a variance, or is that, because I thought it was 40 today?
This would, well, C2, like the current zoning that people, you know, have by right, they can go to 40 feet. What we're saying is that if it's rezoned to meet the downtown code, then it would be 46 feet if it's the Dtmu, the downtown mixed use, which is mostly North and South Main Street. Because when we adopted the downtown code, we didn't rezone everything, so everybody has their existing rights, which this doesn't change at all. So if they have C2, they still have their 40 feet, still have the front setbacks allowed with C2, but this is if you rezone, then the max would be 3 stories, 46 feet.
Okay, and are you just taking 4 stories as struck through? When I see Liberty Hall, I know that's a 6-story, 4-story building.
Yeah, and that would be that's considered the downtown core, which is the 4-story, which had the height of 60 feet, but they received a variance from that height for that particular building. Which they could still request, even if they could request a variance at the 46, but we haven't seen, you know, we had a couple of requests for people when they come in and they're saying, well, you know, it's showing 60 feet, but that's not really, you know, it doesn't fit what's been developed at North and South Main Street. It's more of a 3-story height.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Any other comments from council? Questions at this point? Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. I like these recommendations here in regards to the adjustments with the setback and the heights. You and I spoke earlier this afternoon about something that wasn't part of this workshop, but it's in regards to the density, residential density for the downtown core. So Kathy, the way our code is currently written, we don't have any maximum densities for downtown core, is that correct?
That's correct. There's no limit. So what's been built there, I guess the lofts is the highest density, maybe 30 units to the acre.
And from the geographic area, can you show us what is considered the downtown core?
here's the map. So the map, though, that shows the central business district, it's really showing a larger area than what's considered the core. But the downtown core, where people could come in and apply for the rezoning to allow up to 60 feet, is the Milton Avenue area, Roswell Street, as well as Canton here. And then right here at the intersection, basically, with Academy, Main Street, where Liberty Hall is located, over to Marietta Street on Main Street.
So when we were drafting the in 2015, right? Is this
correct?
When we drafted this, what was the thinking around not putting any sort of a density limit, residential density?
Well, we talked a lot about form code for downtown when it first came out. We talked about doing a form or putting setbacks and densities. And what we wanted to do is what we essentially call a hybrid, is we do have some form where we're not looking at the density, and we determined that the core, which is supposed to be the densest part of the downtown plan, that's more of a form, where those are the buildings that are closest up to the street. It matters the height, the materials, and then the density wasn't a concern in that one. And I think even with the lofts, I think it was originally approved for 32 units, but people bought additional units and wanted larger, so it went down to 30. But it was very much what the form looks like in the downtown core, and then wasn't really looking at what the density was, because that's where you want your most intense development. Intense for suburban downtown, is very different from.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it did catch my eye as I was scanning through it too. And I know back at one point, we didn't have nearly as much residential built in downtown. And so I remember when the loss and that stuff, we were just begging anybody to invest in downtown coming out of the recession. But as I look at what the mix we've developed here, I think we're heavy on restaurants and retail and residential. And I would love to see us, if they're going to build a residential property, I don't know that we really want to incentivize unlimited density on it. Residential density. I just, even from residents downtown now, I'm starting to hear, we got lots of residential down here now. And I do think that it's helpful to have office components and other mixes of uses in there. And I wouldn't be opposed to a mix of buildings, but I don't know that we want to continue to encourage 30 units to an acre.
I think that, we're getting a lot of residential requests, but it's not in the downtown right now because there's really not a lot left for residential. Most of what we're getting is a push for office, but we have a 10 units max to the acre, I think, on the Dtmu, which is, that's of course, North and South Main Street, 10 units. It's a lower height. Definitely the downtown core with the taller buildings would fit additional density. I mean, that's, something we could look into, of a different maximum density. But really, when it was written, it was the height and the setbacks that we thought limited that. But we could, certainly look and see and come back to you.
Like I said, that was just something I thought of. Is early on, we didn't have, Amaranth, and we didn't have East of Main, we didn't have all the housing on Thompson Street or the Maxwell and all the different things that are popping up now. So I'd be curious to hear from the rest of council if they have any thoughts on the matter as well, because that was just something that had occurred to me. Especially in that core, I'm not sure that's where I would want more residential. Councilman Binder.
Yeah, so that downtown core area, to your point, is it already kind of how I view Thompson Street, like the ball's already been kicked and it's whatever happens is going to happen with it? I mean, so if we add to it now, is there really that much more that there's going to be potential for 30 units per acre?
You have the corner, I guess, the Wells Fargo out here at the corner, which would be the main site. I don't know if there'd be redevelopment on, I can't think of the name of that, where there's there's a little bit of North Main. It's right mostly around the intersection, but no, there's not a lot of property. I would say the main piece is the vacant across from Teasley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to
And
the mayor's,
Roswell Street.
hold on, please. To the mayor's point, though, I would like to make sure as we're expanding the downtown, because, it's been successful, so it's going to keep growing out, that I don't want to see the same impact and spreading out. So I think we can do to make sure that it lessens as it goes out to throughout downtown. That'd be fine.
Most of the time, the reason we don't see more residential in the downtown is the parking requirements. I mean, the parking requirements have gone up, which they should have. We saw, what wasn't working, what was working. So you have to have, if you build residential, you have to have those residential places on site. We've got a lot of things in the code about having off-site parking agreements, but we don't have that for residential. So that's what makes it more difficult to get density, is the parking. Which is, how we saw that people use their cars in Alpharetta. It's more drivers than people without vehicles.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
I just wanted to add to, I like the part about the 50%, not to exceed that porch area or whatever. I like the fact that we should be adding more green space up toward the front of the homes, and that can be varied as it needs to be. But like you and I were talking about over on Canton Street, and not eliminating some of those green lawns, because I think that variance is what adds interest to the city, and not having everything come right up to the sidewalk. Right. I think is a much higher end look and adds more value to our homeowners' property. So I like that change. I'm not as intense on the, I don't want too much government overreach as far as the height of buildings and things like that, but it's funny how that gets twisted around when it needs to be. But having everything 3 stories high is just monotonous to me, but I think a varied landscape, and I think any rightful city planner would say the variance there is helpful. So to put a cap, this is it. This is all you can do is 46 feet. I think is overreaching.
Any other comments on this item? Ms. Cook, do you think you have enough information to go back and start putting some of this into action?
I think so, and yes, and I'll reach out and work with council and put something together and come back.
Okay, and for those of you here, a workshop's not an item that's a business item. We're not voting on these tonight. We're just giving comments, feedback to Ms. Cook and our staff so that they can come forward with something that will be decided on eventually, and you'll have plenty of opportunity from the public to participate in that process. So that will wrap up our workshop for this evening. And we do have an opportunity for public comment if there's anyone here that would like to come forward at this time. Seeing no one come forward, we will go ahead and close public comment. How about reports this evening? Do we have any reports? Start with Councilman Merkel and then Councilman Burnett.
So those of you who were able to attend, some were, the mayor and the folks from the villages that through Fergal Brady and his efforts in the city, and with Morgan Rogers, we have a brand new pavilion behind the community center that was done through donations through different players in the city who have worked in and around the city over the years. So it's a great government-private partnership to get it put together, get it done. We had Rotary Connections working on it. Really pretty cool when you pull those together. So if you had a chance to go see it, go check it out. A lot of stuff going on in parks, and we'll probably get you more information and update here in the next month.
It really is beautiful. If you haven't been out there behind the community center near the dog park, there's a 100-foot pavilion that was donated to the city by Whole Foods, Amazon. When they bought them out, it was over off of Upper Hembry Road. And so based on the donations from the private sector, they've installed it right there, and it's a tremendous opportunity for us to have some shade out there in the middle of summer. So thank you for bringing that up. Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you haven't done the census, go do the census. That leads into what my report actually is that I've spent a lot of time with Bob and Tom over the last couple of weeks to find out from a sales tax perspective, if you drilled down to point of sale, what do those numbers be as we approach T-SPLOS negotiations? And so there will be a resolution that is coming forward in the coming weeks because we have to file a resolution to ask for the data, and we have to name one of those two gentlemen to officially file it on behalf of the city. And I think it will be good to know all the facts as we approach having those conversations with the county and beyond. Also to know how many people actually spend money here. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Just a quick one. I was remiss to not mention Senator Brandon Beach and his efforts with our transportation projects. I think that's an area where he really shines in being able to pull groups together and help us to get things done as far as transportation here in the city. So I just want to shout out to him as well. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you. Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, James, for putting up the flyer. We've got Community Development has a community workshop this Wednesday evening from 5:30 to 7:30, which is a community workshop to explore the Alpha Link connection between the Alpha Loop, North Point Parkway area, and the Greenway. So we're asking the community to come out and meet us at the Georgia 400 Center, and we'll be walking around the Morris Lake area and talking about future connections there. What did I say? Oh, sorry. It's a week from Wednesday. Yes, thank you.
Should be warmer by then.
Yeah, maybe to be 98 instead of 96.
Any other reports from council? Mr. Regas, do you have a report for us this evening?
Operations in the city. We are going to extend, we have an outdoor dining program. We instituted about a month ago, about 10 tables on the west side of 9, about 6 on this side. We want to keep that going at least through September. We think it's helpful to the folks who are doing takeout, and folks are very respectful of space and all that. So that's working very well. We have 164 kids in camp this week. So I think we have about a couple of weeks to go. We usually tied these things into when school starts back. And of course, school now is going to be online. So it's interesting how, and we wonder now what can we do maybe with kids beyond summer camp. But we'll explore that with Morgan and with rec programs. And
Glad you bring that up. I mean, I'd love us to put together some thoughts and have some conversations with council about, we know that helping to get our community back to work is going to have to incorporate some kind of child care, and whether it's us doing it or helping work with the private sector to make sure that those opportunities are expanded. I'd love us to continue that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Councilman Bunner has some good ideas on that, so thanks for talking to me about that this afternoon, Jason. Yeah, and with the approval tonight of Mcginnis, Ferry, and Old Milton, we now can put most of the pieces of the puzzle together on T-SPLOS. And I'll get with Tom and we'll get y'all a report on what all we have funded and obligated, and then those projects that are still on the list but aren't approved by y'all yet, and then seek direction as to which one of those y'all want to do. Because of course, if you add all those dollars up, it exceeds what Tom says we'll receive in T-SPLOS money. So we'll have to make some decisions as far as where to go with the rest of that T-SPLOS money. So, And I believe that's it for me.
All right, sir. Councilman Binder.
I appreciate that. No, we got plenty of employees and residents that are scrambling now, trying to figure out how to make it work. So anything we can do would be helpful. One question related to that, I didn't get a chance to ask Sam, but just ask for a legal question is, as the fall goes on and whatever happens with masks, I understand the governor's opinion now, but maybe in asking for a clarification in our public buildings, like if we were going to have kids at the community center and we do want to look at having a mask mandate in the shared areas, if we're even allowed to do that, which maybe we can just look into that at all if that's going to be needed as we move into the fall. So another one too is as we're going into the fall and our mode of operations, employees being able to work remotely if they're in quarantine because of a family member, or if officials or anybody needs to do it, how can that work? So we should just maybe be looking at what we need to be, how we can be flexible in the fall. But you guys have been doing a fantastic job. I can't say that enough. It's been impressive from what you're doing to what every single staff member is doing. So
We have a great group of employees, and we try to be flexible, yet, when we operate fire stations and we're on police beats and we maintain parks and rec centers, people have to show up to do those things. And so, but yet again, we try to work and be as flexible as we can, because we know the extraordinary time that we're in, and we can all kind of navigate through all that. So thanks for the support on all that too, y'all. It's been very helpful and felt by the employees. All right.
Thanks, sir. So I guess that will end the reports. And as sad as I am to tell you, we have an executive session scheduled for this. So I'll call for a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
with the friendly amendment to not last longer than 15 minutes.
Do you accept that friendly amendment?
I'm sure.
All right. That's a first, and I like it. Okay. We have a motion to adjourn into executive session with mandate that it will not last more than 15 minutes. Any discussion? We're staying in this room,
Thank you.
yes. Because of the social distancing and everything, ordinarily we would adjourn to executive conference room, but right now we'll go ahead and adjourn into an executive session, assuming that it passes, and ask the public to leave, and we'll spread out within this room. So I'll call for a vote to approve the adjournment into executive session with a time limit of 15 minutes. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it passes unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you being here online and in person, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next city council meeting.